Sunday Baroque Conversations is made possible by the Friends of Sunday Baroque and is produced at WSHU Public Radio in Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm Suzanne. Thank you for listening. Don't miss an episode of Sunday Baroque Conversations. Subscribe on Apple, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave us a review. If you want to find out where you can listen to our weekly show, visit our website, sundaybaroque.org, for a station list and our 24/7 stream. Again, that's sundaybaroque.org. Elijah McCormack is a young, award-winning, and critically acclaimed singer whose specialties range from early music by composers such as George Frederick Handel and Johann Sebastian Bach to new music by living composers. Elijah is a male soprano who has performed as a soloist and ensemble member with musical groups including Seraphic Fire, Washington Bach Consort, American Bach Soloists, and Dallas Bach Society, and at the Boston Early Music Festival. Elijah McCormack joins me in the studio to talk about his life in music. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So let's go back to your start in music. How long have you been singing, and how did you first start?
A very long time. I grew up in a very musical family. So from a very early age, my brother and myself and my parents were all in church choir together in Fairfield, Connecticut. So that was kind of the early start. We were just always in choir practice. There was a lot of listening to WSHU Sunday Morning Baroque on the way to Sunday services. Yeah. So that took up a lot of my time. I think I joined that choir when I was maybe 7 or 8, and it was a co-ed choir, and so as long as you were singing treble, you could stay from about 7 or 8 until you were 18 and graduated and went to college. Mm-hmm. And so my brother and I were both in that, and then my parents were in the alto treble bass, the Scola choir, that sang with us on Sundays and Thursdays.
Mm-hmm. And does the rest of your family still sing?
Yeah, my brother actually is also a very gifted pianist, and so he still works in this area. Music directs a lot of community theater and teen theater and whatnot. Oh. And my mom is still a part of the same choir. I still sing with that same choir periodically. My dad passed away in 2020, but he was a singer, and he also played viola with the Norwalk Symphony.
Wow. How did that experience shape you as a musician? I mean, that's the family thing, but at some point you had to realize, well, gosh, this is really something I'm passionate about, and this is something I want to do as a life, as a career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't always necessarily know that I wanted to do it as a career. I always had a lot of different creative interests growing up, but I grew up going to the Norwalk Symphony to see my dad play and things like that, and we would sometimes go to the Yale Opera or something, and our choir would pull paid section leaders sometimes from the Yale Opera School and things like that. So just a lot of exposure to music. And getting taken to the symphony, I was not always be a bad classical music person and say sometimes as a kid I was really bored.
It's okay.
I didn't like to just sit there and listen. But when I was a little bit of an older kid, when I was a teenager, I really started to love opera. Mm-hmm. So.
Interesting. Do you play any instruments as well?
I was also in piano lessons from an early age. I didn't like it as much because my brother was always the kind of person who could just sit down and play stuff, and I couldn't do that. I played the trumpet for a few years in school band, and then I got braces, and it kind of ruined it a little bit. And then I joined high school choir, and I did high school musical theater and whatnot. So
yeah, gotcha. So you are a male soprano, which is not to be confused with a countertenor. So why don't you explain what that is? What exactly is a male soprano, and what is your path to becoming one?
So I kind of came a little bit late to music as a career. This is a bit of a long story, so stop me if you feel like I'm rambling. But when I was applying for college, I didn't, like I said, I had a lot of different creative interests. I really liked art, and I liked writing in English, and I liked music, and I didn't know exactly what I was going to pursue. And then shortly before, like immediately before I went into my freshman year of college, I came out as a transgender man and I socially transitioned. And at that point, I was kind of like, okay, so this is it. I'm not going to have a career in the performing arts because no one's going to hire me, and no one will take me seriously as a soprano and as my gender. And I like the only way that I will be able to pursue singing as a career is if I take testosterone and change my voice, which wasn't something that I was positive I wanted to do. And so by the time it was time to declare my major at the end of my sophomore year of college, I chose studio art. And I hadn't at that time pursued any other sort of medical transition either. And then I did. It did not involve testosterone that would change my voice, but I took some other steps that really helped me feel comfortable in myself. And I had I still kept doing music throughout college because I couldn't really imagine not doing it. And I had some great experiences with other student musicians and with my teachers there. And then by the time my senior year happened, they had gotten a donation. It was a very small music department at a small liberal arts college. They didn't normally do like full operas, staged operas or anything. But they got a donation specifically to do that. And they did Handel's Circe, in which I sang Arsamene, and they hired out a professional male soprano to sing the lead of Circe. And that really fit my voice like a glove. And this was kind of my first exposure to like the castrato repertoire. And so not only was the vocal idiom something that felt like it really fit into my voice really well, but it was also a male role. And I had known that there were trouser roles. I didn't really know about this other thing. And also getting to see the countertenor who was singing the lead was also an educational experience. And so my voice teacher at the time asked me, have you ever considered like going into early music for graduate school? And I was like, I don't really know what that means. Because I had done performance in college and I had taken a little bit of music theory, but I had never taken a music history course in my life. But I started looking into it, and the repertoire just vocally felt like it fit me so well. And now I had this other thing that was calling my name in the avenue of being just kind of affirming to me as a person. And so I pursued it, and I went to graduate school for that. I don't tend to call myself a countertenor because I think that speaks to a technique and a method and a vocal physiology that I don't share. I don't really connect with that label. So I prefer male soprano somewhat to clear up viewer gender confusion if people aren't sure what they're looking at on stage. And just because that's kind of what's done. There are high countertenors who prefer to be called sopranists or male sopranos.
Gotcha. And you said sort of early in that very eloquent explanation that you figured you'd never work, that you'd never get jobs, and yet that's proving not to be true at all.
Yeah. Well, so I've been out and socially transitioned and legally transitioned and all that for over 10 years now. When I came out and started transitioning in about 2012, there were no role models for this. There was no one really doing this. And while I was getting towards the end of my undergrad, graduating around 2016, I started hearing more about a few more people, Adrian Angelico, I think, Holden Matagame, and now we have, Lucia Lucas and Lucas Bauk and lots of people of various voice types, various voice parts, various gender identities, doing their thing. We're out here. But yeah, at the time, there was really no one to look to for that kind of career path to show me that it was possible. And that's kind of the reason that I didn't, towards the beginning of my career going into music, I didn't talk about it very much. I didn't really want to talk about it. I didn't know what the temperature was going to be in the industry.
Sure.
But now I do want to talk about it because periodically, I get messages from people who say, I didn't know that this was possible. I still didn't know that this was possible. And I appreciate seeing people be visible about it.
Right. Yeah. So you are now the role model you didn't have back then. 10,
Yeah,
11 years ago.
I am maybe like on the cusp of notability in the niche of early music. I don't consider myself, famous or anything, but occasionally I still get these personal messages that really affirm why I do what I do.
Every one of those is important.
Yeah.
You refer to trouser rolls.
Yes.
And not everybody knows what that means. So what is a trouser roll?
A trouser roll historically has been a role that is the character of usually a younger boy, a young man, maybe someone who's like adolescent. It's kind of a trope that the trouser roll is a young boy who maybe is in love, like is experiencing a first love with like the prima donna or something who he's not going to end up with. But that's kind of what he's doing in this opera. Mm-hmm. And historically, the adolescent boy would be played by a mezzo or sometimes a soprano. So generally that would be a woman dressed as a boy. Nowadays, we're seeing more like countertenors take on roles like that. And it's also a big draw to like gender non-conforming sopranos and mezzos and transgender people as well, who kind of see an opportunity to perform roles that are both vocally a good fit and affirming to them.
So Skidmore is where you went
Yes.
As an undergrad. And it sounds like you did have a really caring, wonderful mentor to kind of steer you towards early music. And clearly that mentor was right, because you ended up getting your master's at Indiana University's Historical Performance Institute, which is no slouch. I mean, that's a very big deal. That's a very, very prestigious program. And you got in, though you didn't even know, you said at that time. So what was that like? What was that experience?
I had great and supportive and very positive mentors in both my degree programs. Mm-hmm. So at Skidmore, I studied with two different people, Jean Marie Callahan, who then retired halfway through my degree, and then Dr. Sylvia Stoner Hawkins. Like I said, I didn't major in music, but people at Skidmore are free to take whatever courses they have time for. Mm-hmm. And then at Indiana University, I studied with the countertenor Stephen Rickards, and Dr. Dana Marsh is the chair of that department and also the director of the early music ensemble there. And we had a pretty substantial cohort of singers that year, my first year there, not all of whom remained in the program, but they were all lovely. All the faculty that I encountered that I worked with were really nice. And the Historical Performance Institute also has the advantage of being attached to the Jacobs School of Music, which is gigantic. Mm-hmm. And so I got to be in some of their operas as well.
Cool.
It's very nice.
So let's talk about the music. What is some of the favorite music and roles that you've sung so far?
Mm-hmm. I've done, for someone who got into this because of the opera side, I've ended up singing a lot of Bach. And I really love singing Bach. One of the probably the biggest project that the HPI did while I was at Indiana University was the St. John Passion, directed by John Butt. Ah. And so I sang one of the soprano solos in that, Zerfließe. And that was, those like the Bach passions are some of my favorite things to sing. They're very beautiful. And some of my favorite roles, I feel like every time I've done an opera role, it like becomes my favorite thing that I'm singing at that moment. Yeah. The first one that I did at Indiana University was just the Taumann, the Duman and Hansel and Gretel, which is, you're on stage for 2 minutes and then you get to go do whatever you want. So I did that. I was Tolomeo and Giulio Cesare, which, it's fun to throw a tantrum on stage sometimes. And then professionally, I did Miles in Turn of the Screw in Miami with Illuminarts. I would say that's one of the most fun things I've ever done in my life. Cool. Very, very tiring and also not early music. Sorry.
That's okay.
But that was, sorry?
Why was that? What made that so much fun?
Great cast, great team to work with, and it was a site-specific multimedia production in Vizcaya Mansion. So we got to do things in that space that generally you can't do if you're just a patron of the museum, and just like really feel immersed. And it's a very emotionally and physically tiring role to do. It's very intense. I had to be a little bit caffeinated through all of it, but it was very artistically satisfying to do. And then I did Balletto and Amore in l'Incarnazione di Poppea with Haymarket Opera Company last year. That was a lot of fun because those roles are kind of front-loaded and you get to monologue a lot and do some of the, as Balletto, do some of the funniest parts in the show. And then you don't have to worry about it too much. You can just go off.
What else is on your wish list? Do you have other roles that you really are dying to do? Do you want to conduct? Do you want to compose? What's on your wish list?
I don't know the first thing about conducting. I should really learn. I keep meaning to learn a little bit about it. There's never enough hours in the day. I'll work on it. So I've thought about composing a little bit, just kind of as a dabbling thing. In terms of like gigs, I'm already doing a lot of what I really want to do. Some of my favorite repertoire also is like the 1700s German polychoral, like Praetorius and Schütz and stuff like that. I get to do some of that. In terms of opera, I always joke a little bit about having a bit of Peter Pan syndrome. I get cast as children a lot.
Ooh.
Miles, Cupid, things like that.
Oh.
It would be a lot of fun to do like a primo uomo, like a Handel lead sometime. I'm working on getting buff so I can do that.
There you go. Well, I mean, opera, one has to suspend disbelief. I mean, think about grand operas where, the heroine was supposed to be a, 16-year-old with consumption and was a 45-year-old buxom woman, and so I think there is a little bit, there's certainly a history for not necessarily having to live the role that you're playing necessarily. So, but there's nothing wrong with getting buff, though.
Yeah, I mean, we're always like, please believe that this 50-year-old mezzo is a 14-year-old boy.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that.
Exactly. What else are you passionate about right now? What's really just grabbing you? Whatever, music or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, the cop-out answer is music. I was always like a really quiet kid, and so when I'm on stage performing, I don't have to talk to people off the cuff. I get to express myself in a way that I'm in control of and that feels just very authentic and comfortable, which might seem kind of paradoxical because, a lot of people have stage fright. They don't want to get on stage in front of a ton of people, but sometimes that's where I feel the most comfortable. And what else do I do? I have a billion little freelance incomes that I have. Like, I like to paint people's pets when I'm in one place. I take personal commissions. I also do digital art because I'm on the road so much. I can just take a tablet with me and keep drawing.
Wow. So that's the art. That's what you initially said you were declaring as a major back in your undergraduate days.
Yeah, I majored in painting. Okay. And I did our version as art majors of a senior thesis was to help curate an exhibition. Basically, we would all have a section of the teaching museum to make into our own exhibit. And so I did 3 paintings for that, and they were really large. And by the time I finished that degree, I still put it to work, but I think I knew by the end of that time that I didn't really want to be a gallery showing artist. I really like taking people's commissions. I like painting people's dogs. It's very fun. And I've also done some work in paint bars, where you sign up for a painting and then you go and lead people through it step by step while they have drinks or snacks or whatever. That's a lot of fun. I've done that at 3 different locations in various places I've lived, and I want to get back to it sometime if I can.
Oh, nice. So you're teaching painting. Do you do any teaching of music as well?
I've done a little bit. I did a little bit of teaching I lived in Arkansas for 2 years.
Wow.
My partner is an academic, and so we've moved around a few different places. But yeah, from like 2019 to 2021, I lived in Arkansas, and I did a little bit of teaching of like beginner piano and voice at an after-school program there. I've had a few private students over the years. I've been like a substitute piano teacher for like very young students a few times, just here and there.
Oh.
But I haven't had a ton of voice students.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm at this point I'm not sure I really have the time to get started on that.
Right.
But I did like it when I was doing it.
Great. Well, I've been speaking with male soprano Elijah McCormack. Thank you so much for stopping by to speak with me in person. It's great.
Yeah, thank you for having me again.